The great thing about Quarto is that you can style the output to how you like it. I used to think that this can only be done by HTML and CSS experts, but it turns out that it's very easy, and this is what I'm going to show you today. Here's a document that I have set up for this video. It has a little bit of text in it and it already uses one of the default themes. Now what we want to do is to add our own theme on top of that. In this case I will just add an SCSS theme file to this theme. And the way to create such a file is to create a new text file and then name it something something.scss. I've already created such a file and you can find it in this left column. I think it's quite convenient to work with 3 columns here, because then you can have your theme on the left, your Quarto file in the middle, and your output on the right. If you want to use 3 columns in RStudio, just go to Global Options, Pane Layout and add another column. Now, if you render your Quarto file with this SCSS file added to it, then you will get an error message and it will say that the file does not contain at least one boundary layer, which is one of those. So let's add the defaults and the rules layer to our SCSS file. Today we are going to change the defaults, and in the next video we are going to change some rules. This second part is more powerful, but we will start with the basics in this video. Now if we re-render this, then the error message is gone and we can start changing our theme. So the question becomes, what can we do with such an SCSS file? The first thing we can do is to define a couple of colors we want to use throughout our theme. We will just use the $sign and the name to define variables, and we will fill them with a value. In this case, it's just a hex code for a color. And then we can define a whole set of colors. Here I've just defined a couple of different versions of gray. And we can also define the 3 main colors of our theme. Now, if we save this file and re-render our Quarto document, we will see that the color of our hyperlink has changed. The reason for that is that this primary variable is already used by other parts of our theme, and therefore if we change the primary color, things like the link color or the color in the table of contents change. And this is exactly how you can style a lot of things in Quarto. It's very straightforward, right? Just find the correct variable that you need to change and then set it to a value that you want. The question now becomes, how do we find these variables that we need to change? And here's the cool part. We can just look them up in a list. On the HTML theming documentation from Quarto, you will see that apart from the default themes, down below at the end of this page, you can find ZES variables, which are also the same thing as SCSS variables. In this list you will find a lot of things you can change. But if these are not enough for you, you can also look at all possible variables in the Bootstrap documentation. That's the name of the framework that Quarto uses in the background. On the bottom of the Quarto documentation, a link will lead you to a GitHub repository where you can find all the Bootstrap variables. For example, if you want to change the background, then you could search with your browser for something like BG. Or if you want to change something related to the font, you can look for the word font and see if you can find a variable that has a promising name, and then you can just try it out in your SCSS file. Let me show you how that works in our document. Back in RStudio, we can fill our SCSS file with a couple of Bootstrap variables like body color and set it to gray 700. Now, if we re-render this, you will see that our text became a little bit lighter. To make it very obvious, we could also set this to gray 400, but let's leave it at something more reasonable. Then we could add stuff like code block BG, which changes the background color of the code block. If I save this and re-render our Quarto file, you will see that I have set my code background to this secondary color that I have defined in my SCSS file. And with the same strategy, we can change the code background color for the inline code as well. Because you see here in the inline code, nothing changed. That's because this is determined by a different variable, and if we check the list of variables again, we will see, okay, code BG is the correct one for the inline code. Now, after we've changed this, the combination of this text color and the background color isn't really nice, is it? So let's set the code color to the third color from our theme and re-render everything. These were very easy changes, right? And before we move on, let me invite you to hit that like button if you find this video useful. This will help both me and the YouTube algorithm to figure out if you actually like this video. So thanks for hitting that like button, and let's get back to the video. With a couple more Bootstrap variables, we can change the fonts of our documents. In this case, we will change the font families to something else. So just having saved this new variable, we can re-render our document and the font immediately changes. Notice that I have used multiple fonts fonts here and not just one. That's because I can never be sure that whoever opens my Quarto documents has the specific font that I want actually installed on the computer. So I will give a couple of fonts in the hope that one of these fonts is actually installed. Otherwise, the reader will just see some other default font family that is installed, but it may not be as nice as the font that I actually specified. And with the monospace font for the code, I can do the exact same thing. And if you want to change the font size, you can just set the base font size to something in the unit of rem, where 1 rem is the default value. So if you increase this value, then your text will very shockingly become larger. Now I've said that we have used a couple of fonts just to be sure that the user can actually see the font that you want to use. But if you really want to ensure that, for example, the Georgia font or whatever font you want to use is available to that person going onto your Quarto document, you can make sure that the fonts are imported as the website is loaded. To do so, you can add an add import and call a URL from this, which targets the Google API to get fonts from there. And in order to make sure that you actually load the correct font, you will have to specify that using the question mark followed by a list of font names that you want to get. You can separate multiple fonts by vertical lines, and if one of your font names contains white space, then just replace those with a plus. And just like that, you can import multiple fonts so that your Quarto documents will look the same on all computers. There is a drawback to this approach though. Your URL calls the Google API, and this is not necessarily compliant with GDPR, that is with data privacy in the European Union. If you want to comply with this, then you have to download all of your fonts to your hard drive manually and import them locally. This is a bit tricky, so I won't cover this here, but there is an R package called gfonts that will actually help you to download the correct files and give you the CSS code that you need. And then once you have that, you can just throw that code into your SCSS file. So as I've said, this is a bit tricky, so let me know in the comments if you want to see a video on this. In today's video, we have learned an easy way to style our Quarto documents. And in the next video, we are going to take this one step further, and I will show you a really simple and powerful tool to style anything that you want in your Quarto docs, even if there is no Bootstrap variable for that. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.